Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today again for another webinar, actually fifth, in the series introducing the Ocean ICE project. My name is Eva Horovcakova, and I work at the European Polar Board that is facilitating this webinar series. I repeat it at each of the webinars, but I think it's good to note that the Ocean ICE project is a Horizon Europe project funded by the EU Commission and the UK Research and Innovation. But you can find more information on the Ocean ICE website that I will put in the chat. If you joined our previous webinar, you probably remember we focused on work package 4, dedicated to quantification of Antarctic ice sheet deep uncertainty and freshwater fluxes. And you can find the video recording of the webinar and also previous webinars on the EPB and Ocean ICE YouTube channel. I will also put a link in the chat. So at today's webinar is a bit special because we will focus on two work packages, work package 1 and work package 10, both of them dedicated to subpolar circulation, heat delivery, and water mass export. So now I would like to introduce you our today's expert speakers, Markus Janout, Pierre Dutrieux, Natalia Shepel, Shenjie Zhou, and Mathias Van Caspel. So they will give you presentations with overview of work package 1, work package 10, presentation on circumpolar oceanographic data collections and results from circumpolar ice ocean simulations. The presentations will be followed by Q&A, so please feel free to write your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom. And your questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Yeah, now I will give a word to Pierre first.
I think Markus will start.
Markus, okay. Yeah.
I will start with the presentation. I will share my screen.
Great.
Is it in presentation mode? Yes, very good. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in our webinar here on Work Package 1 and Work Package 10 with an Ocean ICE. So my name is Markus Janout, and I'm the co-lead of this Work Package 1 together with Pierre Dutrieux. And so Pierre and I will start to introduce the work package, and then Natalia will take over to introduce Work Package 10. And then Shenjie and Mathias will share some of their scientific results with everybody. So Ocean ICE, you may be familiar with this, but the project was designed to investigate the impact of Antarctic and Southern Ocean processes and the feedbacks on planet Earth. And so it covers a comprehensive view of the climate sciences around the Antarctic. So some of the compartments deal with ocean processes around Antarctica, which is what we'll talk about today. Then there's the ice sheet component and ice shelf component, ice sheet modeling and freshwater fluxes, and the impact on the global ocean, all the way up to climate impacts and tipping points and to policy-related subjects. So just a quick introduction into our sort of study region. We're mainly interested in the processes on the continental shelf and slopes. Most participants are oceanographers in the work package, and so the shelves and slopes, they're very important in regulating ice shelf melt and water mass formation, for example. So the schematic here shows a simplified view into a cold region, a cold continental shelf. So what we have here is a situation where we have cold winds blown from the continent across the continental slope, leading to sea ice formation and a salt input into the ocean, which then creates the cold and dense water masses that prevail on the shelf. And these are important for driving ocean currents and ultimately to be exported down the continental slope into the deep ocean. Another very important feature here is sketched out the circumpolar deep water, which is present all around the Antarctic continent. And in this situation here, we're looking at a cold shelf. The warm water is kept away from the shelf through the dense water on the shelf and a frontal system, so-called Antarctic slope front. So that's something to keep in mind. And but not every shelf around the Antarctic works like that. So here we have schematics showing this mode 1, which we just saw a cold case, a cold continental shelf, and then the opposite would be a warm scenario where this front that we have in the cold shelf is missing and grants basically uninhibited access of the circumpolar deep water all the way to the ice shelf. And so that results in very warm situations in contrast to the cold ones. Here's a spatial view, a map around the Antarctic with bottom water temperatures showing that the mode 1, the shelf, the cold shelves are mainly found in the Weddell Sea here, as well as in the Ross Sea and in parts of the East Antarctic, whereas the West Antarctic is characterized by significantly warmer temperatures. So some of the processes that occur on the continental shelves result in the dense water formation that we just talked about, and this results in the formation of Antarctic bottom water. And so that's a very important water mass in the global ocean. It composes up to a third of the global ocean volume. And interestingly, it's mainly created in only 4 regions around the Antarctic. So the Weddell Sea and the Ross Sea, these cold shelves are the major formation sites for the dense shelf waters. And then there are two minor regions, the Adelie Coast and the Fritz Bay region. So it's very limited in space, despite the importance. What we have overall, what is known is that the formation of the Antarctic bottom water is reducing due to global warming, due to changes in the atmosphere and the ocean. And this reduction then has potential consequences for the global ocean circulation. So you see it's the formation sites here and the subsequent spreading into the world's oceans is quite a complex scenario, which then requires dedicated circumpolar coordination of these regional monitoring studies and process studies. And that's something that is a big part of Ocean ICE. We're looking into a circumpolar view as much as possible in the scope of this work package and in the project. And as part of that, it is quite interesting and it is quite important to understand the role that neighboring shelf seas play onto the downstream regions. For example, what we call the shelf seas connectivity or the east-west connectivity. Here we have one example. In the Amundsen Sea, we have enhanced melt of ice shelves, and so we have an enhanced input of meltwater, which gets carried downstream towards the Ross Sea, remember, which is one of the most important dense water formation sites. And so it is necessary to understand the impact that these neighboring regions play for these dense water regions. And so here's one example from a 6-decade-long time series from the Ross Sea, where we see the temperatures and the salinities decreasing quite significantly over the last decades. And so if we have a decrease in the freshening of the water properties, that changes the ability of a region to form these dense waters. And so there's the connection that needs to be studied. Besides Antarctic bottom water, the other big subject that we're looking at is ice shelf melt. So this map shows, first of all, with the temperatures, the colors around the Antarctic, red meaning positive ocean temperatures of up to 1 degree or so. And we see the dominant warm regions, as we just talked about, the warm shelves in the West Antarctic. And so this relates to enhanced melt of the ice shelves in this region. So that's displayed here also with the red colors around the fringes of the Antarctic continent. We have seen the most dramatic melt in the West Antarctic here. There are some other regions where we do see melt, and then some other more stable regions, Fichtner region, for example. And just comparing the warm ocean here immediately tells us that the warm ocean water is a main driver for the ice shelf melt. We talked about this initially. And so for us, it's quite important to understand the processes that take place on the continental shelf, as they are key regulators to allow and to prevent the southward warm water transport towards the ice shelves. Just as a reminder, the ice shelves are important for global sea level. The ice shelves surrounding the Antarctic continent have a buffering function to slow down the export of continental ice into the ocean, which would then contribute to this global sea level. And so, as my last slide here, we need to notice that the global sea level, of course, is one of the most dramatic side effects of global warming. We know that the sea level is rising, but there is a considerable amount of uncertainty as to how much it will rise by the end of the century. So here's from the IPCC report showing that the rate of sea level rise by the end of the century will depend on the emission scenario that we as a society choose to follow in the next years. So the Antarctic has a major contribution to sea level rise, and it also has the single largest uncertainty with that. But to keep in mind, the Southern Ocean is a major driver of ice shelf melt, and therefore immediately relevant for global sea level and ice sheet melt. With that, I hand over to Pierre, who will give more practical examples of what we did in the work package so far. Pierre, you take over, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Markus. So indeed, the goal, our goal is to basically provide a new analysis, a new product to analyze processes in Antarctic shelf seas and analyze how the heat and salt content is changing over time. And so to do that, we need to understand, well, first characterize these changes, but then look at fluxes coming either from the surface, sea ice, or the shelf break, or coming from the neighboring shelf seas, and also to look at how these effects impact the dynamics. And so to do that, we need to look at the currents. So we developed a few methods to do that, and we're going to do some new observations. And Markus, you're still sharing your slides, so can you go to the next one, please? And so one example product that is already available to the community is Circum-Antarctic 1992 to 2023 sea ice production data set that was derived from wind observations and sea ice concentration observations. And here is shown the mean areas in red where there's a lot of sea ice production, and you have a time series for a small area in the Amundsen Sea region. So lots of variability in there. It's available for everyone. And the next example product that is also available is a Circum-Antarctic sea surface height product from satellites aggregating a bunch of satellite products, and it's from using two different methods from two different groups at the National Oceanography Center and at the Sorbonne University. And the particularity of this product is that it covers ice covered region, looking at extracting sea surface height from regions with open leads between the sea ice. So these products have been validated, and there's a time series on the bottom left here comparing the two products in one region, and they compare relatively well, and so they also are available. And finally, another example of thing that we have been doing is deploying new observations and basically developing the use of autonomous profilers in shelf seas regions. But the particularity here is instead of having them drift at mid-depth during profiling, we have them landing on the bed during profiling. That allows them to park and not drift too much. And so we can consider them to be virtual moorings of a sort. So every 10 days, they give us a full profile of the water column. We deployed 8 profilers to date as part of work package 1, and Natalia will mention 6 others. But to show you what kind of data we can obtain from these things, we deployed the first ones about a year and a half ago. And so here are 3 examples in the Amundsen Sea. They were deployed from the RVRB Arion. And you have the trajectory in the central panel of one profiler over a full year. And you can see that it drifted a little bit, but not too much. Then you can see the temperature varying over time in that region. But then the bottom shows you what mooring at high cost would provide us over 15 years, and what the profiler provides us for a fraction of that cost over a full year. So not only does it cover a higher range in the water column, but also sends us the data without having to use a ship to retrieve the observations. So it's highly complementary to other types of observations. And with that, I'm going to leave it to Natalia to continue and present Work Package 10, which follows up on using these type of technologies.
Okay, so we decided to deploy 6 Argo floats across the Bransfield front in the Bransfield Strait. So we're trying to figure out and just to play them accordingly on the similar distance, and just to show how the Weddell Sea waters mixed with the Bransfield waters and how they will propagate. So also the places were chosen according to the concept that Pierre mentioned, not moving too far. So it's like a quasi-mooring technology, and I will show you later how see the trajectory in 18 cycles. So that's for now it's still more or less the same, but with some of the differences. We can go to the next slide. Here we also tried to get a complementary to the program to do CTD profiles. So that was for the most central Argo floats with the depths from 500 meters to 1,000 meters. We are also collected besides CTD, pH, and fluorescence sensors and oxygen. So this data is on quality control and quality assurance. I believe that will be possible to share. Of course, it will be added to the catalogs. The resolution here is 4 pins per hertz, so not the highest one, but anyways, it's possible to see how things are changing and how do they move. We can go to the next slide. Here you can see the trajectories. So unfortunately, we have for now 5 floats instead of 6 one. No ice event for the moment. So I hope that maybe in future we will receive the signal from the float number 6. So that our idea is that maybe it's because of the changes in temperature or change in bathymetry, maybe it's we'll send the feedback a little bit later, but we are hoping for the best. For now, as far as you see, they are doing spirals, not propagating too much, not going too far, just floating all around. So that also will be good to understand the properties of the water. And as we don't have the winter information at this area, I hope that it will be very important for all the community. And next slide. So one of the ideas was to measure on the daily purpose with the daily cycles for 26 hours, 16 days in a row. So this information is already available, and we can also analyze this data to understand do we have internal tides comparing with the climatology in this area. So for now, 2 stray floats can be analyzed because they are not moving back and forth. They are just doing the very short and very fine line. And also we can see how the temperature moving, and also the salinity situation is mostly the same. So it's going up and down, and that also will be very beneficial to understand the seasonal change altogether with a change in internal flights. That's all from my side, and I will give the floor to the next participant.
But did you want to share your own or Shenjie?
I think it's fine, Markus. You can take over the screen, and I'll give you a shot if I need to go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to present 2 unique data sets that's being compiled within the work package 1. So one is the Pan-Antarctica mooring time series compilations, and the other one is actually consists of 2 data sets. The one is the updated hydrographic profiles that's been collected south of 65 South, and another sub data set come out from this effort is a updated Southern Ocean full depth climatology. So next slide, please. So the first data set is the Pan-Antarctic mooring time series. I think the reason that we are interested in collecting all these data sets is firstly mainly because that's mooring, it can helps us to monitor the thermodynamics and dynamics of the critical water masses and some very key oceanographic features such as the slope front, and it gives us a continuous record of that. And this helps us to understand the changes of these processes across various timescales. So we know that there are numerous mooring data sets available in the region of interest, but there is always a lack of a standardized database to keep these records in coherent formats and to keep them regularly maintained. So I want to note that there's a similar effort that's been going on at Suez Mooring Network, but at the moment they only record the existence of these mooring, but they don't really provide the landing page of the actual data sets. So I think this data compilation will be a bit complementary to the effort that's going on at Suez. And scientifically speaking, these collecting all these mooring data sets can help us to provide an opportunities to systematically look at the connectivity across different shelf seas regions around the Antarctica. So on the right, what I'm showing is some basic stats of the mooring that we collected. So overall, we have collected over 500 mooring time series over nearly 500 mooring sites since 1970s. And as you can see, the pie chart in the middle, that over 80% of these mooring time series is equipped with the current meters or current profilers, which gives us an idea of how the current is changing over time. And so these instruments are mostly bottom biased because when we set up the mooring line, we try to avoid to put too many instruments at the surface to avoid the activity of iceberg and sea ice. And generally speaking, all these mooring time series has a nice coverage on the seasonal scale. So it basically records records variables across the whole year, and most of them can last for longer than 1 year. Next slide, please. Yes. So the first thing that we looked at based on these mooring compilation is to from a energy spectrum analysis to understand the partition of the kinetic energy from different processes. And we know the Antarctic continental shelf is a region that experiences very strong tidal signals. So the plot I'm showing here is the the PDF of the spectrum that we extracted from the mooring time series. So the first panel is the original time, is based on the original time series, and then we decompose that into the tidal harmonics, which is the one on the bottom left, and the d-tided spectrum distribution, which is the one on the top right. So I think the takeaway message from these plots is that indeed the mooring can well capture all these strong tidal signals on the diurnal and the semi-diurnal ranges. But at the same time, we can see there are still like significant amount of kinetic energy left behind after we d-tided the time series, and this energy tends to concentrate on the time scales between from synoptic to seasonal time scales. Next slide, please. This plot is just to show an example of the dominance of the tidal energy and also how it's distributed across space. So again, the three panels are showing the kinetic energy derived from the original time series, the tidal harmonics, and the d-tided time series. And we can see and this is for the diurnal energy, for the diurnal tidal range. And we can see the tidal harmonics takes up most of the energy. And the d-tided kinetic energy is rather small across different places. And the tidal energy that's estimated from the spectrum analysis can actually very well predicted by the tidal model, which is the scattered I'm showing on the right. So they basically show a very good agreement in terms of predicting the K1 tidal constitute magnitude. Next slide, please. So another interesting result that's coming out from this practice is that we found some distinct spatial distribution of the non-tidal energy across different continental shelves. The most striking feature that we found is that the stronger non-tidal energy tends to concentrate in front of the cold shelf, where the dense shelf water is formed, as alluded by Markus earlier. So as you can see, the map on the top left is showing the d-tided energy across the synoptic timescales, and you can see in front of the Fulton and Roney, in front of the Cape Darnley, and also on the Ross Continental Shelf, we all see elevated d-tided energy, whereas in the warm shelf, such as the West Antarctic ice shelf, the d-tided energy has been generally lower and compared to those cold shelves. And this actually holds not just for the synoptic timescales, but also for the intraseasonal timescales and seasonal timescales. And the explanation of such distinct spatial distribution could lie within these two hypotheses. The first one is to do with the local water column stratification. So we think that in front of these cold and dense shelves, the water column is very well mixed. In other words, it's very weak stratified, which makes the whole water columns probably more susceptible to the atmospheric forcing, which imprints the kinetic energy onto the synoptic timescales to seasonal timescales. And another hypothesis is that these cold and dense shelf regions are also the main formation site of the dense shelf water, which could lead to the process of strong export of these very dense water that can contribute to the elevated non-tidal kinetic energy. This work has been written up and submitted to the ESSD, the Earth System Scientific Data. And you can find the preprint of that manuscript here using this QR code. And also this mooring compilation has been published at CNOA, the public the data repository. And you can, and it's freely available through this QR code over here. Next slide, please. So the second data set, on the conscious of time, I'll quickly go through, is the hydrographic profiles that that we collected from 3 different measurement platforms. So the first one is CDD, which is a ship-based CDD cast that's measuring the full water depth of the ocean. But the issue is that they can only occupy a very narrow region, just like what schemated on the panel on the top left. Those red lines are repeated serviced ship track with CDD costs being done every once or every twice a few years. Another one is the Argo profiles, which tends to have a broader spread across space, and the other one is the seal profiles, which give us a very nice view of the continental shelf, because seals tends to linger around in those regions that ship and Argo floats normally can't really go. And the bottom plots are just showing the distribution of these 3 of the profiles collected from these 3 platforms over space. This is the latitude on the bottom left, and over the time and across the seasons. Next slide, please. So we collected these profiles and we standardized them, and the top plots are showing the sort of the distribution of the profiles within a 100 kilometers and 100 kilometers size box, and the color is showing the count of the profiles. And as I mentioned before, that the seals really gives us a good complement on the coverage of the continental shelf, whereas the Argo floats have the broadest distribution across the space. But the CDD dataset, on the other hand, it can give us some idea of the earlier days ocean conditions. Next slide, please. So the next step that we took based on the profile compilation that we collected is to create a sort of new Southern Ocean climatology. To do that, we sort of used we need to come up an interpolation scheme to make the most use of these profiles. So the first interpolation scheme that we went for is based on a Southern Ocean database legacy, which they use the ellipse to at each grid point to find the data and make the average across. And this ellipse was initially designed to be aligned zonally, because that's the dynamics in the Southern Ocean is largely zonally. And in this effort, we did a bit of a modification by align these ellipse along the seasurface height contour, so that we can take into account more detailed dynamics. And the size of the ellipse is constrained by the local topography. So in the open ocean, we have a larger ellipse, which and in the continental shelf, which we think the land scale of the dynamics is much smaller than the open ocean, and then we reduce that the size of the ellipse in order to capture the finer scale structure. But this method alone can provide us a very good view of how the hydrographic field looks like in the climatological mean sense, but it doesn't really cover the gaps when there is really little data set. So to do that, we adopted a method called fast marching, which actually fetch the data along the isobats. So this algorithm help us to determine which data in the surrounding is along the same sort of topography contour, which we think it would be more likely to be influenced at the grid point that we're interested, so that we can use this sort of method to fetch enough data in the region that is actually there's no measurements in order to fill the gaps. So a third weighting or a third extra temporal weighting is also created for us to create a summer climatology, and that temporal weighting, it gives us a gives the data set with more weighting when the data set is closer to the January, which is the Austria summertime. And then this weighting decays when it's further away from the summer period. And next slide, please. So here I'm just showing a example of how this weighting works. So the top plots are the selected data points and colored by the weighting according to different strategies. And so at the same time, so we have like two sort of distance weighting strategies. One of them is fast marching, the other one is Southern Ocean database, ellipse-based influence. But we also introduced another sort of constraint to control the relative contribution of these two, because we want to preserve enough small-scale features that can be retained by the ellipse-type averaging. But at the same time, we want to have heavier weighting of the fast marching strategy to be able to fill the gap in the area where there's no data. So the relative contribution is actually controlled by the data of the count of data at each grid point, so that we can modify the relative contribution of these two strategies. So the bottom two plots are the example of what we get from this climatology. So the bottom left is the temperature maximum on the continental shelf of the Amazon Sea, and as we can see, it can capture the temperature structure very well, in the sense that we have warmer water occupied in the deeper basin of the continental shelf of the Amazon Sea continental shelf as a signature of the modified warm deep water, and in the shallow region it is colder because this mainly occupied by the cold surface water. So, and we also provide a modified standard error to provide the uncertainty of our climatology, and which is based on the data abundance. And next slide, please. So this is just a very brief comparison between our climatology and the World Ocean Atlas. And I think the take-home message from these plots are that the ocean ice climatology can well capture some of the key water masses presence in the that's being captured in the raw profiles, such as the dense shelf water that's been talked about before in the Weddell Sea continental shelf, and it is more pronounced if we look at the TS plot on the top left, that our climatology can well capture this signature of the ice shelf water, and we have more count along the freezing line, which is a signature of the water masses that associate with the sea ice formation, where the ocean ice has underrepresented these water masses. And another point that I want to make is that because of the better resolution of our climatology, we can actually resolve the structure of the continental shelf front much better than the World Ocean Atlas, as shown by these vertical section plots on the bottom left. Next slide, please. So here I'm just going to quickly talk about the outlook of the use of this climatology. So the first one that we gonna continue to do based on the climatology that we have is to explore the temporal and spatial abundance of the data that can facilitate any temporal variability analysis at the given timescales. So I'm conscious of time, I'm going to skip this practice and move to the results of this practice. So here is the map of the searching radius that we derived from a series of steps that I skipped. So the map is showing the minimum searching radius at each grid point in order to have abundant data to perform a time series analysis at the given timescales, and the given timescales are labeled at each map at the center. So this gives us an idea about, for example, if we want to talk about the variability, the decadal variability or the interdecadal variability, where we have enough data in the reasonable amount of the range to facilitate that sort of analysis. So the blue means that we don't have to travel too far to have enough data for such analysis. Red means we really have to travel really far, and which won't make too much sense if you really want to talk about the variability or the trend at that time scales at that place. Next slide, please. Another thing that we're inspired to do is to re-examine this sort of the bottom water property trend that has been done before with the new climatology and with the updated data sets. These are just example of the bottom temperature and salinity trend that's been derived from our data sets and in comparison with the one that's being presented before. Next slide, please. And the goal that we want to achieve from this data set is to delve into the temporal variability that we just talked about. And this is just an example of the temporal variability of the bottom temperature anomaly across different continental shelf seas. And we are interested in some of the covariability that might already emerge in this very raw time series. But yes, there will be more to be done with these data sets. And next slide, please. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Mathias, take it away.
So, next slide. So I'm going to present some results from an institute. And so I'm Mathias, I'm doing the modeling, but I'm cooperating with all the work package. So next slide, please. So I'm using the finite volume sea ice ocean model, and I'm running a global mesh with the benefit that we can use variable resolution. So in the Southern Ocean, we have a resolution that goes from 2 to maximum of 40 kilometers, and it can vary in the other places of the globe. The initial conditions are from the World Ocean Atlas, and this simulation is forced by the Japanese reanalysis from 58 to 2020. And next. So here's just some information about the mesh. So we have 650,000 points on the surface, and more than 30% of these points are located in the Southern Ocean, south of 60 South. And I'm using 148 vertical levels, and using larger number of vertical levels is so that we can resolve the dense shelf water exports of the continental shelf. Next one. As all model studies, the first step is to check if the model is performing well. So we did a thorough validation of the model results. Here I'm just showing an example that's based on the velocities. So on the left, you see the figure of the ocean velocities integrated from 100 meters down to the bottom. And I'm showing here a few important currents. That's the Antarctic slope current. It starts on the Amundsen Sea, there where you can read the Antarctic ASC on the map. And there it's, well, not always there, and it varies with time. And the model is also able to reproduce the weather gyre and the Ross gyre. And next one. So, and well, this is just part of the validation of the model, and that's the part that I wanted to show you here now, because that's what is serving as basis for the next analysis I'm going to show. But if you are interested, you can read the complete validation of the model in the link provided or in this Zenodo file, so the deliverable 1.7 from Ocean Ice. Next. So the next step was to study the fluxes between the different shelf seas in the Southern Ocean. And for that, we defined several sections. Next slide. And we defined the 10 sections that we thought that's a number where we can still quantify the connection between the different shelf seas, and with a number that we can show you something in the figures. So Those are all the 10 sections we picked. And for each section, we did a series of analysis. Next slide. So the first analysis we did was the calculated total volume transport by the Antarctic slope current. If you remember, the Antarctic slope current starts at a Amundsen Sea and goes all the way around to the tip of the peninsula. And next slide, please. And here you can see the orange and blue arrows where the Antarctic slope current starts. And that's, if you remember from the velocities map, the currents are not that strong there, and it's not always present, the slope current in these regions. And that is a feature that's in agreement with observations. And with the model, we can see for longer periods that it's more there sometimes and not there other times. Next one. But after leaving the Ross Sea, the Antarctic slope current is a constant feature, and it's present at all times and goes all the way around. So as you can see, started by the dark green arrow, it's where the leaving the Ross Sea, and all the other sections, the slope current is present. Next slide, please. There is a strong seasonal cycle in the Antarctic slope current, another feature that is in agreement with observations. And here, because the model gives us a standard monthly mean outputs, I calculated the monthly climatology, which we are showing in the second figure of the right. And the monthly climatology shows, the seasonal cycle. And if we remove the seasonal cycle from the main time series, next, we can see that there's still a lot of variation on the Antarctic slope current. One thing that surprised me when I was preparing these plots, and I don't know of any report of that before, it's that all sections seems to vary together. So there seems to be a good correlation between different sections. And to test that, I did a correlation test between all the sections. So here you can see a table, and you can see for each section, I checked the correlation without any delay with the other sections. And based on this table and correlation minimums that you want to set, you can define different subregions that to study the Antarctic circumpolar connectivity. So you can decide to investigate only the places that are strongly connected, or you can investigate places that are further away but still have some influence in your region. And that's a table aimed to assess the next studies coming up with circumpolar bases. Next slide, please. So for next step was to check where can we see export of Antarctic bottom water from our model. So I defined some thresholds for the Antarctic bottom water and calculated the transport along each of these sections. And everywhere where you see white arrows in the map is where we don't have any signal of the Antarctic bottom water, and the colors indicate where we have signals of the Antarctic bottom water. And on the right, the top figure shows the volume of Antarctic bottom water carried by the Antarctic slope current. And you can see there that the Ross Sea, so dark green, and in the Weddell Sea, the orange and the light blue arrows, the transport is quite high. And that's, as was previously mentioned, where are the regions where there's more dense shelf water formation, therefore more export of Antarctic bottom water. While where you see the red arrow, so Delhi coast, and the brown area, part of bottom water is not a constant feature. It's not there every during the whole year, and they are export. And that's also important to know, because if we want to go there and make observations, we should be aware that when we measure it only once or 1 year, it doesn't mean that it's representative for the whole area for all periods. And that's a nice complement to the observation studies. And we
Sorry, Matthias, we don't hear you well. Does maybe your internet connection?
also computed the variability of temp bottom water crossing that. Okay, hello? Are you listening?
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
So where did you lose me?
Just like if you can repeat the last 2 sentences.
Okay, so besides of the transport, we also calculate the temperature and salinity variability, and we have shown here. The things are not exactly matching the observations, but we also see some freshening of the bottom water exported from the Ross Sea. Next slide, please. So besides of the quantifications of the total transport of the Antarctic slope current and the export of Antarctic bottom water, we did 3 experiments where we removed the basomelt influence from 3 different regions. So 1 was removed at each experiment. But these results are, next one, please. The results of the experiments and all the results I mentioned before about the sections are published on the deliverable 1.8 from Ocean Ice, and that you can, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to discuss them here. And that's basically what I wanted to tell you about the modeling results we have here. And if you have any interest or questions, you can try to take a look in the reports published, or you can drop me an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you very much to all of you for your presentations and for sharing your insights and expertise with us. So I think now it's the time for questions, right? I would like to ask our audience, if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And while we are thinking of your questions, I would start with some of my questions I have for you. So the first question I would like to ask you is how does work package 1 interact or integrate with the other work packages in the Ocean Ice project? Any of you who wants to answer?
Maybe I do the first one. So, as we pointed out, our work package is focused on the sort of geographical region of the continental shelf and slope, and so we're quite interested in how the slopes and the shelves interact with the ice shelf for one, and then with the deep ocean on the other side. So there's the natural integration is to understand the fluxes towards the ice shelf, which is more part of the work package 2. And in contrast to that, the formation and the export of the dense shelf water, for example, that is very important with respect to global ocean circulation. That is more a part of the work package 5. So there's the natural connection and integration with these other 2 work packages. So our work package is further, or the ocean ice in general is designed to have cross-cutting themes as well, so that specific subjects are being dealt with, and that's independent of the work packages. For example, the lower cell of the bottom water formation, that is something where all scientists with a specific interest in the bottom water come together. A similar subject is the freshwater flux. so that to foster the exchange between and across the work packages.
Thank you. I have other question. Ocean ICE is a European project and involves many European partners. So is there an active participation of other international colleagues in your work packages?
Yes, indeed. There's definitely a lot of partners. So not only do we have a few European partners, including Ukraine now, within the work package, we actually strongly interact with South Korea, New Zealand, Australia, and the US, either collaborating on deploying platforms in and around Antarctica, or on the science side. There's all of the work, for example, that Shenjie presented, the data collections are going to be used in various model intercomparing climate modeling projects in the future. And so they're already being taken up by programs such as ICE WP1, which is the ice sheet model intercomparison project, iteration 7 of it. So yes, it's definitely a lot of interaction with everyone around the globe.
Thank you.
I can add as one example something that was a result from within Ocean ICE for within our work package, some dedicated float experiments together with the Australians, where Pierre and myself and others from this work package are a part of, to have a dedicated experiment to study in the Denman Glacier in the East Antarctic, based on these methods that we applied here that Pierre presented in the beginning with these grounding floats. So there definitely activities starting to come out of the collaboration within and around Ocean ICE that are felt on a more international level as well.
Thank you, Markus. I would go to the other question if there are no questions from audience. But you all still have time to write questions in the Q&A box. So other question from me. What should we expect after the Ocean ICE? Do you have any thoughts about the needs for future work?
Yes, Markus, I can try to answer that. I mean, what basically I think Ocean ICE is opening a lot of gates and a lot of perspective for future work. So not only are we going to better understand interconnectivity between shelf seas, but we're going to be able to see processes that are going to necessitate further work in the future. For example, setting up a new monitoring observation between the Amundsen and the Ross Sea, or between the shelf seas that are upstream of the Fishner. Similarly, when we get to understand the dynamics of the exchange at the continental shelf break between the shelf seas and Southern Ocean, we can think of doing process studies in various different settings, in the mode 1 that Markus mentioned, but also the mode 2, and maybe do them in parallel, such that we have a similar understanding of how the physics works in both of these settings using the same methods. So upcoming, there are big programs that are touted about by the community as part of the International Polar Year or Antarctica in Sync. And I think these will be opportunities for us to do more work in the future.
Thank you. I got one direct question in the chat that I will read for you. Can you explain a bit more about how the Argos buoys work? They drift around on the bottom, or are they cycling up and down to collect water profile data and send data via Argos?
Yeah, so they are they are basically buoyancy-driven autonomous vehicles, but they don't have any wings, so they literally only have the capability to go up and down by inflating or deflating a balloon at their base, which changes their volume and therefore their buoyancy. And so they can only go up and down. Typically, this type of profiler are used in the open ocean, and they indeed park at some depths between profiles, and the cycle of the profiles is typically 10 days, but you can set it to whatever you want. But so here, the only tweak that we're doing, well, there are two tweaks, but one is that instead of parking at some depths and drifting during profiling, it's actually parking on the seabed. That allows it not to drift too much because we're trying to avoid them going under ice shelves and being lost in ice cavities forever and never see the light of day again, because we only get data from them when they reach the surface and send the data via satellite. The other tweak, which was developed before Ocean Ice, obviously, is the ability. So these profilers have the ability to think for themselves and decide whether or not it's safe to try to surface. It's based on temperature in the surface layer of the water column, and it's based on their ability to go up. If they can't go up anymore, despite their best efforts, because they are really trying to go up in the water column, but they can't, then that means they are stuck. And so they understand that, and they can decide, okay, I'll try next cycle. So that's basically the way they work. But we can talk to them on the fly, and we can tell them to change the way they cycle more often, or instead start to park in the middle of the water column instead of going on seabed. We can give them orders. So they are not so smart, but smart enough.
Thank you, Pierre. We have other question from audience from Sam Chester. Do you have any other locations of interest where you think mooring with Argo floats would be possible?
Yes, they can be used anywhere, but if you want to use them in virtual mooring mode, typically this type of Argo floats, there are deeper versions now, but the type that we're using can only go down to 2,000 meter depth maximum. So that means they are not going to park any deeper than that. Fortunately enough, the Antarctic shelf seas tend to be maximum depths of 2,000 meters, so they can park there. But if you go into the deep ocean, then you need to use other type of profilers. And so you can use so-called deep Argo. It's not very original. And these can go down to 4,000 meter easy. Some can go even deeper than that. And then you can use other type of even smarter types of profilers. Basically, they're profilers where you give them wings, and so they can transfer this up and down momentum into horizontal, and so they can glide in the ocean, and they're called gliders. And so you can use that to then tell them to glide towards a waypoint instead of drifting freely into the ocean.
Thank you.
Well, if I may add, now the interesting things that come out of Shenjie's and Mathias' work could also be to identify the data gaps in the climatology and in the data collection, or to identify the more interesting and dynamic regions that we know we're lacking data of, that Mathias identifies in the model. So now we have these opportunities to use these tools for more dedicated experiments, right? That's something that we should do for upcoming campaigns, for example. And the other thing that is worthwhile to mention is the use of biogeochemical Argo floats, now that are not so part of our work here in this work package, but overall, when it comes to the carbon budget, that's we have a lot less data available in general, and so that's where Argo floats become in particular interesting when it comes to observations made during winter time, for example, when ships usually can't get to the area, and where these can collect the seasonal cycle of biogeochemical properties. So there's a big world out there for Argo floats and autonomous devices to improve the data availability and the knowledge in the future.
Thank you, Markus. I have one more question from audience. Have you considered using tag data from species other than seals, for example, penguins, to increase sample size and temporal spatial coverage? Or do you think the amount you have from seal data is enough for what you need?
I think well, one issue is the size of the sensors and requires a decent sized animal. So I don't know much about using potentially penguins for tagging. I know with seals they're big enough, and their molting cycle allows to tag them during a certain time of the year to carry the sensor for up to 9 months or so before they change or lose their fur, before the sensors will fall off, and that may be an issue with other animals.
Yeah, there are ethical reasons to not use these sensors too much, and also, I mean, different animals have different foraging cycles. For example, penguins, as Carlos mentioned in his answer, don't tend to dive as deep. They typically stay in the top 200 meters of water column. So if your focus is understanding what the top 200 meters of the water column is doing, then penguins are actually very good, and they've been tagged, instrumented in some regions for that purpose. But if you want to go down to 1,000 meters or 2,000 meters, then you actually need to go to seals, and even some types of seals are better than others. There are some deep divers, long divers, and some shallow divers. So yes, and then you can also indeed use whales. And they go even deeper, but they don't surface as much. So I mean, it all depends what your objectives are.
Very interesting. Yes, we are heading towards the end of the webinar. I have one more question, which is less technical, but it's my favorite question to ask. So if you should send one message to general public or policymakers, how would you shortly explain why is your work in the project important?
Markus, apparently you didn't do a good job at explaining it to begin with. Eva wants more.
Very general,
Second chance.
generally shortly.
Very general. I mean, we're dealing with some of the processes and conditions that are extremely important for the whole planet, right? So we're looking into the ocean circulation, and we're looking into the ice shelf and the ice sheet. And so one has immediately to do with our climate here in Europe as well, and the other controls the sea level, which is also, I mean, especially in Central Europe, many low-lying cities, just like in other parts of the world. So I think there's a big importance regarding the work that we do, and the parameters and the processes and the implications that we're looking at. So feel free to add here.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's nicely said. I think what's kind of amazing about this part of the world is that it hosts processes in a tight corner of the world that have a major impact on both the climate system. They create the water masses that fill the abyss of the ocean and allow for the ocean cymolia and the global cymolean circulation to work. So redistribute heat and salt all over the globe. But also they impact global sea level. And so both of these things are very important to humans on the planet. And it's all concentrated in that part of the world. So actually you can just concentrate your work into that part of the world and have a big impact. So yes, it's important.
Thank you very much, and thank you for answering all the questions that were there. So I don't see any more questions. Yeah, if there are no more questions, I would like to just shortly show one slide and advertise a bit our upcoming webinar. I also put a link in the chat. So as you can see on my screen, tomorrow we have another webinar in this series dedicated to Work Package 2, Cryosphere Ocean Interaction Processes and Feedbacks. So if you haven't done so yet, feel free to register for the webinar and join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. We have quite many speakers tomorrow, so the agenda is full. So save more time in your calendar. But you can see more details when you click on the link that I put in the chat, where you can also register. So there is the full description and the agenda of the webinar. So I hope to see many of you tomorrow. And yeah, and now I just would like to thank you all again. Thanks to all our speakers for your presentations and answering your questions and sharing your knowledge with us. But also, I would like to thank the audience that they found the time to listen and for their interest in the Oceanize project and specifically in the Work Package 1 and 10. So thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, I will see you soon.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Bye.
a good one. Bye.